Hello, good morning. Low-Code Campfire for Friday, December 17th, the last one of the year. This is number 31, and it is the week before Christmas. For those of you who are new to Campfire, this is a gathering of the community. We get together and share and show techniques, challenges, experiences. This is open to everyone. Bring something to show or questions, and please be ready to help with ideas and suggestions. That's really the best way we've seen, the best thing that we've seen within Campfire is you guys helping each other. All of our past editions are recorded on our YouTube channel, so subscribe to youtube.com/plantandapp and make sure to choose the alarm as well so you get notification when we submit new things. We have a pretty informal agenda because it's a meeting format. We say hi, and then around the campfire, we'll do these things in mostly this order. We'll have a first call, whatever's on your mind, and then talk about any contributions to our shared website, community and beta kinds of things, any submitted topics, and any other open mic things to round out our hour. Again, it's pretty informal. Try and keep, if you've got noise behind you, stay on mute. We love it when you submit questions or topics in advance. We at least can make a slide for them so we can have a spot in the agenda and talk about them. Sometimes I do some preparation. And so you can either use that QR code or this feedback form is in our invitation emails. So with that order of business done, hello, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Happy holiday.
Dale. Good morning, Jim and everyone.
Good morning.
Hello, hello.
Good morning, everyone.
Anyone new to the group want to say hi? Mostly familiar faces today.
I rarely get to join in, but I do enjoy it when I can.
Well,
my day job sort of gets in the way sometimes. I don't know about you guys.
Yes, indeed. All right, so we will jump in then with, let's see, first in order of business, Campfire. The next two episodes are not being held. Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve. We just did figure the attendance would be pretty darn low, and it's a vacation day for me. But we resume again on January 7th. So we hope to have you back then. So we are now up to first call. What's on your mind? Anybody with a burning problem or something you just want to get off your chest?
Dale, I'll just say thanks for your support. We are in the middle of a DNN Evoke upgrade at this point, and you gave one of our BAs some help troubleshooting some issues, and I just want to say thanks.
Oh, absolutely. Of course, it's my job to do it, but we try and be right on top of those things and keep you guys from problems and being out, and encouraging wherever we can to do checkpoint backups and development upgrades, clone upgrades, instead of doing it live on production with everybody watching.
Good call.
Yeah, I know. Anybody that attended on Wednesday and saw about Firebase and Jerry Maddox's contribution, and I thought that was a good presentation. I just didn't be interested to know if that's anything you guys have planned in the near term.
This is Mark. Yeah, I saw the presentation. I am very interested. I think, as I said in the chat window, yeah, I've tried to do stuff like that before. I looked into all the process that it takes to get push notifications going, and it was difficult. It was challenging. There was a bunch of moving parts, and so I was very interested in what he was doing, and it looks like it's going to work great. The app that I had intended to do that for, one of two, was just a simple chat window that I needed to keep live. I want the chats to show up when they happen. And I did something with a timer that worked okay, but that push notification would be better. So I'm looking forward to implementing that for that. It's good stuff.
So the chat window thing that you're talking about, that is on a mobile app? or is it I'm sorry, it's for a mobile app?
Well, no, but it could be. I intend to put it on a website, and I think most people would be using this website while on their mobile phone, but not all. And so I just needed a part of the screen, like maybe a floating chat window, very much like a support chat window that you'd see on a lot of websites. And I just needed them to pop up when they happen.
The reason that I ask is that I don't know if you remember the various ones that we've talked about with Pusher. That is especially, I mean, it's not at low volume, the last I checked, it was a zero cost solution. At higher volumes, you might get into a little bit of cost, but the video that I did and I published all the I called them Pusher tokens that would make that happen, and it's very easy to make a chat using that is real time. So
great, thanks for the reminder on Pusher. I did look at that with very much interest as well. So yeah, I'll look at that again. Thanks, Dale.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm going to be looking at doing that sort of integration probably springtime in all likelihood. So yeah, it was very interesting, and Jerry's very knowledgeable and also very entertaining.
I agree. He has a good presentation format. Good. All right. Anything else? If not, then here we go. I took a look. I haven't added anything to our common website, Campfire website, and there were no others. So we'll skip past this, other than to say, if you're not already part of the Campfire website and you want to be, this is campfire.plantanapp.com. We can sign you up. Everyone gets to be a low-code engineer. If you attend these meetings, you get to play in there. And this is an opportunity to post things, post techniques, and the idea is that someone can come behind you and take a look at how they were put together if you're trying to do the same thing. So Campfire website. I don't know if Bogdan is coming. Oh, he is coming. He's going to be a couple minutes late. There is his message right there. So we'll skip past this slide and come back to that. In which case, Jim had a question about InfoBox. What is it for? When to use it? How to use it? So first of all, has anybody used InfoBox? We know what we're talking about here. If we go to, just duplicate that. If we look in the configuration, the product is InfoBox, and then we have it within Plantanapp as training, and you can create guides. So, and then let's take a look here at our documentation for InfoBox. Say, what is it? So the idea is that it creates digital walkthroughs on your DNN portal. If you haven't, actually, I'm going to post this on the chat here just in case you hadn't, you want to go and take a look at this. But the idea is that you walk people through. It's an introductory, or can be used as an introductory thing into your website. And so for user engagement and improving the customer journey. You had submitted this, I think, a little bit ago, Jim, to talk about it, and I hadn't jumped in on it because we, at the time, there was a JavaScript problem. We've done some improvements to it. Bogdan, I see you're on the call. Are these the improvements? This is good to go in version 1.18. Is that correct?
Yes, there will be a hotfix. We addressed a couple of more items, but with the hotfixes, I think we addressed most of the issues. So yeah, I think it's working beautifully now.
Good. So with that, let's say that by the time we get into our next meeting, which is now 3 weeks out, I will have a demonstration composed and we can kind of walk through that. I don't have one available, but that's the purpose, and you can read more about it there. And Jim, I know that's kind of half an answer. Is that?
That's okay. I mean, I see it there, and sort of like we did with the search, you know, there's some hidden, I'll call them, I don't want to, hidden opportunities in there that I didn't realize are there by reading through the documentation. So, and I couldn't find an example, at least not knowing that I was looking at an example of InfoBox being implemented. You know, but if you're going to do something in a few weeks, that's fine.
Yeah, that'd be good, and you know, give me a chance to put together at least something to help you visualize. Maybe I'll make a training guide for the campfire to, you know, how to do something in that, how to submit a contribution. That product has alternately worked very well and then fallen behind or needed some love, and so I think it just got some. There's some improvements in the way that we connect to things. So, for example, when you're designing a guide, you would typically point to something and have a box that provides information about a particular area on the screen, for example. And our selection logic wasn't needed some improvement and things like that. So it's gotten some love. It's we're optimistic that it will be a more used feature than it has been in the past.
I mean, what I was looking to do is on my forms and stuff where you have a little, you know, the little eye for information, be able to pop up and give better help. And I didn't know if I should try to create something from scratch or try to use the tool in it. But like I said, that's what I'm looking to do.
So would that be for a first-time user, for example, versus a
some of both, first-time user, but then sometimes it's staff that, you know, something they don't use very often, and like, what are the steps to go through to, you know, create a particular item or object in the system, you know, so they can prep for it.
And my recollection of that is that it will do kind of both of those things. You can have a one-time thing and then it won't present again, versus something that shows up and offers itself to help each time. So a lot of different uses for that. So I think it's going to work, be a good possibility for you. So I will work that up. There was, and this was a community forum thing. We were talking last week some about how stars are not going to be part of, and forms are starting to retire from fields within listings. And so I worked up a demonstration of how you can do stars with a listing. This was the question. I think this was your question, right, Matthew?
That's correct.
And so, for example, we are using a pop-up to be able to rate. So we have a book and we want to rate it as excellent or above average, whatever. We're providing a nice star rating and then displaying the stars on the listing. And so being very interactive with it, but it's happening as a pop-up as compared to a field within the item row. And so I put together this little demo, and I promised that I would walk through it a little bit just to show kind of how it can go together. And so without, if you'll indulge me, I will do that. This is a page that I built. It uses an entity for the data source. It's the book entity. And so this just happened to be an entity on my instance, but this is not a pre-built Plant and App form. This is a form I built, or a listing rather. I added an action grid to the page and configured it to point to my book entity. And so I have just two fields, which is name and stars. And the stars, actually, it's probably worth taking a look at my entity. So if I go into configuration here and look at my entity for book, this is an entity I had previously, but I added a rating field. This is a number, integer, and the intention is we'll put 1 to 5 in there, and that'll be the number of stars, or 0 for no stars. So that's the only change that I made to my entity, added a rating. If I go into edit mode on this, I created a form to do this, to do the stars rating. And so if we were to take a look at that, I have the name of the, excuse me, I have an event to read the book. So I manually added this in. So I'm getting the book from the command line. This is the ID of the book. So we need, when we run this form, we're going to need to pass in the book, and we're outputting O book. I just picked it's the output of this O book. And so now all of the tokens, assuming we had a good ID, all of those tokens are available to use. So if I go into my fields, I have a field called name. It's a text box, and I am it is not enabled. So this is just a display of the name, and so I'm initializing it with book name.
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Could you go back to that other where you did the get? Yeah, okay, that record ID, get : book.
Where's that coming from?
Yeah.
So stick a pin in that. It's going to come from the listing, and I'll stick a pin in that, make sure I get back to it. But when we use this form, when you click the button, it's going to pass the book.
Okay, so, all right, I understand. What I'm really asking about is that structure, get : book.
It's
I know
just
the book is your entity.
That's the same as a query string.
Yeah, it's the same as query string.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So I happen to like get and all its variations, getter cookie, getter session, and so get is just easier for me than query string, but it's the same. You're picking something off the query string, and so I'm expecting an ID to be called book to be passed in.
Got it. Thank you.
So, okay, good. Thanks for stopping me. So we have the name, and then I did the same thing. I put a star rating field on. It's getting initialized to that rating value. And so then I have it configured with 5 stars, step 1. I want it to be nice and big, so I did it extra large, and the rating between 0 and 5. I put in some captions. So 1 is not very good and 5 is excellent. And so those pop up automatically as you choose. And this will end up putting a value into a field called, the ID is rating. And then finally, I have my save, where because I designed this to be used incognito, you don't have to be logged in. And so in order to make a change to an entity, we have to be in the context of some user. So I just picked my host user here. This isn't a secure thing by any means, but it's just to demonstrate the technique. So we're acting as super user. We are partially updating the book using the same ID and providing the rating back. So we're still passing a number back into our field. So when they've saved, we have updated the book, and then the next thing we do is refresh the listing. We're triggering the listing module, which is here automatically on the list because it's on the page. So I was able to select the books listing to automatically refresh. So this prevents the page paste back, or rather causes it to update automatically and then I'm closing pop-up and stopping execution. So there's no post-back rather involved with this. So it appears to be somewhat instantaneous. Does that make sense? So this, I've kind of handled the form part of this. Now we can go back and take a look at the listing part of this. If I were to go into this listing, and notice the listing is called books, back into the listing here. On the buttons, I have a button called rate this title. I didn't actually, rate this title. It's, I've chosen the star as the icon for it. It's open to everybody. And all it does is open the rate this title form. And here's where I'm passing the book. I'm passing the ID in the book field. And so that's how it's connected to the form. And the ID comes automatically from the row that I'm working on. So this is an item button, and the row has all of its properties. So this generates this item button. And so it pops up our form. We can provide our star rating and save. So the last piece that's left is, how do I get these stars to appear? And I used an HTML hack to make this happen. What I did was I created 6 images on my system. And we'll go ahead and take a look at site assets here. Of course, this takes a second to spin up, but I've made one for each of the, let's see if I can find it in case I didn't look to see where this was. I think it's this one. Yep. So I have something called 0 stars JPEG, 5 stars JPEG, 4 stars JPEG. So I have 5 different variations of, or 6 different variations of what the stars rating can look like. And so, for example, if I look at the download, if I get the URL of this thing and take a look at it in the browser, it shows a 3-star image. So the point is that if you have a 0 rating thing and you build a link to display an image 0 stars, then I'm sorry, if you take whatever the rating is and put it in front of stars.jpg, build a nice HTML string, it's going to display that image on the row. And that's exactly what I did. So if we go back to looking at our book grid and look at the stars column, I've added a computed field, and the computation is, I'm not sure whether this is might be a formula field. I don't know which it is. It's one of those two. And so I have added an image that pulls directly from my website right down to that folder. It has a rating. This is where we pull in the rating from the current row. So this is going to have some kind of value 1 through 5. If it doesn't have any value at all, I'm providing the value of 0. And then it ends in stars.jpg. Whoops, I don't want to make that change. Stars.jpg. And I just grabbed this URL as from the site assets. I just, in the same way, the one that I was just looking at here, I just used it as a template. So it provided this version token and whatever. So I just copied it and used it as is and just replaced this one little section with the rating. So as a result, when this runs, it displays different images based on the rating. And so that's the hack that I use to get stars to show up.
What is that version token or whatever that you put on, or version?
Sure. So when we were in entities, and I just pasted this from when I clicked the download thing, and it gave me this. This was the URL that I picked in site assets. I chose get URL, and it gave this to me. The version, the purpose of that within DNN is that it ensures that it's unique. If we uploaded a different 3 stars JPG, it would end up getting a different version. And the value of that is that browsers will cache URLs. So this image URL is cached on my browser with this J0Y whatever into it. If we uploaded a different 3-star image, it'll get a different version. And now the browser, when it tries to load this, it will actually update the version. The point is, it will not pull. If we didn't use a version thing, it might pull from its cache, and it might be the old image. This is a way to force that the image gets updated. Did I explain that anywhere near close to sensible?
So the combination of the image name and that controls how it's coming out of cache when you need it.
Thank you. That's much better.
So okay. So but you can reuse that string, that GUID there, as long as you have a different image name, I guess is what.
Yeah, if we
that on the go.
if we let's say if we didn't use that, if we just had 3 stars.jpg and we uploaded a new image, then somebody coming along that had seen 3 stars before might get the old image out of their cache. By doing it this way, when we updated the 3 stars image, we would also need to come in and update this grid with the new URL, but it would be unique for them. So your users you wouldn't have to give instructions like, hey, you need to refresh your cache. It wouldn't be in their cache. We by changing the listing setup, it would no longer be in their cache, and then they would see.
For instance, if you wanted to go from gold stars to blue stars,
yep,
that would force everybody to go to blue stars, right?
Yep.
But by the same thing though, if you don't change it, then it is going to the cache to get it, because that version number and file name is, you're not downloading that on every row.
Right.
So that GUID at the end is obviously a construct at the browser level, because the GUID, if you went to each 0 through 5 stars, they would all have a different string at the end from DNN standpoint, right? But the browser doesn't care, because it's constructing, that's for its own purposes, not DNN's purpose. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Yep. You're right.
So that's why you can get away with doing the token replacement of the string of the file name and not have to worry about that GUID at the end, if I'm catching it correctly. Do I understand that?
Yeah, you got it right.
Okay.
But I would add though, that version number doesn't have to be anything special. You don't have to get it from DNN. You can put 1, 2, 3 in there, or ABC, or whatever you want. And sometimes when I know that whatever image gets, whenever something happens, I want it to be the new one, and I don't want the cache version at all, I'll put the token for a random number in my version. And so it's random every time it gets seen.
So, and this is not, we're taking you far afield here, Dale, sorry. But does that imply then that token string, the GUID string at the end does it expire? In other words, does the browser automatically do a flush, or is that something that like a cookie you can set with an expiration date? Does anybody happen to know?
It's going to be up to the browser. It's on the client side, and
It's browser dependent, and it's a timer. Something around 2 weeks, it expires.
Okay.
You might think of it as it decides to flush its cache in that amount of time.
But they could the user could hit flush cache
Sure.
on their own as well. And just, I guess, to fully close the loop, I used a snipping. I brought up a 5-star rating to get to where to get the result that to get all those different images. I brought up a 5-star image and then used a snipping tool to grab that. And so I grabbed this image like this to create a 5-star image, and then to create the 4-star image, I cut that off, and I cut that out. I just built them myself, is my point. It's a hack, right? But it took me 10 minutes to do, so it's an effective hack.
That was a 5-star job. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. Let's see if I can close out what I don't care about here anymore. Onboarding, that example.
Dale, do you think it's worth showing a different way to do it that I think will be also reusable and nicer? Of course, it involves code, so I'm not sure.
I'm up for it. You want to tell me what you're thinking?
Yeah, so basically, if you go to the listing admin again, on each field you can put formatters. And those formatters are also highly customizable, so you can create your own. So for example, open the star field, and then you have a formatter. You did a template column. No, so you need a regular field, I think.
Let's just add rating back in here if I can find it. Rating, there it is. All right, good. So we've got formatter field.
Yeah. So basically everything that you see here also comes from config files. So you should be able to create your own formatter that just is the star rating. And then to do this automatically without having to configure. So then it's more reusable from site to site. And I have the files open. I'm happy to show you an example.
That would be great. Let's do that. And I will have to say this is the second meeting I've been in today where I've learned something new. I learned this morning about the clock field type in forms, and today now I'm learning. It doesn't surprise me that this formatter is customizable, but I've never even thought about it.
Yes. So here I'm in my website folder. So if you go to Dexter module, GNS action grid config, of course, we are all used to this config folder. You'll find a lot of stuff in there. But one is the formatters folder. And here, same as with actions and everything, there's let's say an object for everything that you see in the list. So just to bring this up in a text editor. So for example, let's look at the money. So when you select a property to format it as money, it uses this definition, from here to here. And what this definition says, you'll see, this is the type, and I will show you the C# in a bit. This is actually what's doing the formatting, but this is generating the UI. So when you do the formatting of type money, it will ask you how many decimal places should it show, and you have a drop.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're showing us the C# on screen.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Let me start from scratch. What's happening? Oh, this one switched my screens. First time it happens to me. Okay, let me go back from scratch. So yes, we have this Dexter modules DNS# action grid config. In this folder, Dale, I think, also showed it a couple of times in various modules where you have all these config files. So formatters is where the formatters live. So the entire list that you saw there, it's in this file. So then if we open this in a text editor, you'll see it's a JSON object. So from here to here, this one is the money field. So when you add a field and you say it's money in action grid, it actually goes to this configuration and knows to render it using this part. And I will show you that in a bit. It was on the other screen. And then this is the UI, the admin UI that you see. right? So in the admin UI, there's a property that says decimal places, and it has a select, a dropdown with all these values. So you select how many decimal places it has. You know? So then you'll see for everything for date. So everything that you see in that dropdown for formatting is defined in this file. You know? So potentially,
sticking with our common pattern, you wouldn't want to modify the default, but you could create a copy and
yeah. So exactly, I would create a copy and maybe call it star rating.json.config, and then of course I would change all the IDs and the types to match my definition. And probably here I would copy a lot of what we have in action form, you know, to reuse the same fields, because we have the field in action form. And then when it comes to implementation, it's just implementing an interface. So the interface, let me go to it. The interface is this one, the sharp action grid core formatting iFormatter. And when you implement this interface, you have to respond to this request for format. You receive the value from the grid, you receive the definition from the grid file, and using this, for example, this one is the money field. It's a very simple one. It just parses the number as a decimal, the value as a decimal, and then returns it using built-in C# formatting for money.
so the code that you're looking at and being able to see, I mean, trying to put myself in a client's perspective, they're not going to, they don't have that as a pattern to work from, right? So,
As a sample, you mean?
yeah, they don't.
Well, they have this video now.
Well, and so, for example, if somebody wanted to implement their own, and is this the kind of thing that they could make a support request to say, can you show me the pattern for this?
Yes, yes. But I think for a C# developer, it's quite straightforward, because if you implement this interface, you get this format. So then you know everything that you receive, and then you can do the adjustments.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. For example, this one is one that is a bit more complicated. So this one is file size. You know, so let's say that number now represents a file size. You want to show it as a file size. You know? So for example, what this one does, it looks, depending on how big the number it is, it either display bytes, kilobytes, megabytes, gigabytes. You know? So then you don't show like 1 trillion number. You know? Things like that. So they are pretty basic, pretty easy to implement by a C# developer.
And so this goes back to the case that our product is extensible in so many different ways, and this is just one more.
So in this case, then, if you had the formatter built, that would then be essentially a drop-down choice and how to use it. You feed it an integer typically, and that would run through that process and then display the corresponding number of stars.
Yeah. So probably your formatter will receive, again, you have the value, you parse it as a number, similar to what we do here. So you have 1 to 5, and then maybe you have a big switch. If it's 1, return this image. If it's 2, return this image.
Yeah.
So you'll return the HTML probably, you know, with the entire image tag and everything.
Okay.
Yep, a little bit more effort, but then it would be standardized and usable across your site.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay. Thank you.
Even though that was in the grid code, those formatters, do they apply to forms too?
I didn't hear it. Your question.
When you were showing your sample, you were under action grid, but will those formatters apply to grid or to forms also, action form also?
No, just to grids. So this is for the grid columns. It's this field that Dale has on the screen with the formatting.
So if you wanted to do the same, have the same format, you would just duplicate that over. There's something similar in the action form pattern there.
Yeah, in action form, you have different concepts. So you have fields. So yeah, you could create your own fields. Action form doesn't have this concept of formatting because usually it's editable fields, it's not displaying fields.
So in essence, Bogdan, what you're saying is this formatter would take the place of the string and the token that Dale had put in.
Exactly.
Right.
You'll not need the custom template field that Dale created.
Right, right. It would just be essentially baked into the product at that point.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you very much.
And then, you know, Bogdan showed some of these other ones. File size, for example, was one of them. So the administrative, the configuration lets you pick what size, what unit that you want to display, and then the code responds to that unit. So each one of these can have its, the administrative interface can pick up that additional information, and it gets passed to the formatter.
Cool.
So, yeah, it is cool. All right, so there's the brute force way, the elegant way, and very nice.
Can I add something?
Yep.
I was just thinking how I would do that too. And I thought that it's conceivable that those stars, once they're presented right there in each row in the action grid, when you go to change them, I think the form could be called to pop up, but I think maybe even the contents of the form, like the stars themselves, could then be with some jQuery, could be popped right into the grid. And they would be able to click on it right there in the row without clicking on it in the pop-up. So I guess it comes down to, if you didn't want the pop-up to be covering up your grid, you could probably pop all the contents into the row and it could still work, but with a click on the appropriate star. It would close the pop-up, but you never saw the pop-up to begin with, but it would close it and save its contents.
Yep. One thing to be aware, because I see this problem with some sites, is touch devices, you know, because when you start touching, things start to change, you know, like maybe you rate accidentally. I see sites where they haven't implemented this. So I think sometimes the pattern of, let's say, double clicking to get somewhere, it's better because of this. And of course, depends how often, because yes, if that's the job of a person to go through a page and rate 20 items, then it will be insane to open 20 pop-ups. You know? But if it's something someone optionally gives a rating to, then a pop-up, I think it's a better pattern.
In this case, in the use case I have in mind, this is going to be, you know, more to the former, where it's a dozen items, 10 items, and maybe 2 or 3 screens of, you know, several items. That's why pop-ups wouldn't necessarily, I mean, it would work, but it would be very click intensive. So something along the lines of what Mark was saying perhaps might be better, might be actually much better. But is what you're saying, Bogdan, taking the approach where Mark was using the, I forget the method he was referring to, you're saying that might not lend itself well to a touch environment?
Yes, because I mean, I think it also depends how you implement it, but I see, for example, we use Azure DevOps internally. And if you open it on mobile and try to scroll, you actually start moving cards around from one column to another. And then you have to remember, where did I drag it, you know, and then go on the desktop to fix it. You know? So it's actually annoying.
Okay.
Right, so if those stars were in the rows and they were live and clickable, but you were on a phone and you tried to scroll and your finger was touching a star, you would be rating an item instead of, you know, unintentionally, because your intention was to scroll. Is that the point?
Exactly.
That's a good point. And what did you say about a double click? Is it possible to implement a double click?
No, I meant the double click, like open the pop-up first and then the rating. And I think one optimization would be to close the pop-up when you do the rating, you know, instead of having to click OK or save.
Right.
that could be another
Okay.
optimization.
There could be a 6th star, which was a apply rating, you know, and so if you were scrolling on the stars and you touched one by accident, it would just be prepared to make the change, but not implemented yet.
Yeah.
So you touch the other, you know, the end, the next button.
Mhm.
It's just a thought. If you really want to have them in line, I think you could accomplish it. And
And inside the action grid, there's also the possibility to create your own fields for inline edit. So, you know, we have the inline edit mode and you have a couple of fields.
Yeah.
And that also can be extended with new custom fields. You know? So could potentially be also a field for inline editing. You know? So yeah, I think you want to add a button maybe on the buttons, a special button. Yeah, and then maybe go to the rating and make it editable. Go back to the data and rating. Yeah, I know this new interface will get a bit to get used to. Add back the rating field maybe, because I see it's no longer there. Yeah. So here you have inline edit a bit lower on the page. And then, yeah, you can choose here one of these field types. No? But this again comes from configuration file and HTML template, so you could potentially create your own.
So just like you've got a color picker, you could have a star picker.
Exactly. So this could be again another pattern to solve this kind of problems.
Yep, and so this could also be a case where you crawl, walk, run. You have a solution that you could use that would work, and then, you know, if it's highly used and you want to invest the time to find a less clicks, or you know, build the customization, you do that.
Well, yeah, I might take that up separately with you guys, because this is this is really key to some of the things that I'm trying to get done here in my project. So thank you very much for your input. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed this conversation as well.
So Jim posted a question about recursive workflows, and you know, I'll read what he's got here. But Jim, if you want to pop in, and then maybe the question ends up becoming: is this the right design, or how do we deal with it? But I have a workflow that gets data from an API. A part of the API returns how many records there are to process. In the API call, the parameters specify the starting point and the record count to retrieve in 500 record chunks. The first call does the first, starts at row 1, the second call starts at row 501, et cetera, et cetera. And so, Jim, I think you were indicating you're seeing some, that because this is recursive, you're starting to see these stack. And
Right. Well, and the way I had originally implemented this, at the end of my workflow, I looked at the values, and then, oh, there's still more to go. Let me go execute the workflow. And that's been working fine until it blew up one day. And then I realized, oh, I have this whole recursive stack going on, you know, because I got an error message that was, you know, 17 levels deep to tell me, you know, because it kept calling itself over and over. Again, there's got to be a better way, because I'm probably not using server resources well and things like that. And, I don't know if, I mean, this job is scheduled, so it, you know, I don't know if I should, you know, call that workflow, reschedule it somehow. I see some new under the flow menu now, actions. I see a execute async, which I'm going, well, maybe I could put the workflow in a token and execute that token. and I see one that's a restart or restart a workflow, but I didn't see how to pass out a parameter. So I did look and how other people might do the same thing.
So from my first thought on that was that if you designed it where the first workflow called a second workflow, the first workflow's job was to iterate through it in 500 to start at pointer 1 and go to pointer 501 and on, and the second workflow was to just handle from that point. Point is the second workflow would end versus calling itself again, and then the first one would just there might be 50 iterations of calling the second one, but that from a design perspective, that might keep you from getting 17 levels deep. Does that make sense?
It does, and that was one of the designs I was thinking, okay, I can fix it by doing something like that, and I just wasn't, is there any advantage to another method? I know Ben is really good at, he does a lot with scheduled jobs and stuff like that, and I didn't know if there was any performance advantage one way or another to doing different techniques.
Okay, Ben's taking the challenge. Come in, Ben.
I reserve any comment at this point until I understand, I think, a little bit better. I apologize. I'm a little distracted here because there's like a kind of an emergency going on, so I'm split
No problem.
focused.
I'll comment more. Thanks. I have also designed this kind of thing to happen where it works off of a scheduled task, and the idea is that it does the first iteration. This is actually some work I did for Jeff, who's on the call, but the first iteration processes the first chunk of work, and if it has more to do, it adds a record into the table, and this automation is responding to inserts into the table. So by inserting the first record with step 1 or pointer value of 1, it can it does that level of work, and then it has it sees that it has more records to go, so it just throws the next pointer into the table, but the automation ends and relies on the fact that the trigger will be triggered when record 2 gets added. So it ends up recursively calling and keeping going until it runs out of records. That was the scenario. I didn't even know how many records were going to be there. I just knew that there were more. So you process the first one and then add another record into your table that initiates an additional call. So that is a design pattern that has worked for me.
So that's using the job scheduler database trigger on insert or something like that? Yes,
on insert. Yep. So you have to have a table for it or an entity for it that it can detect that it's there, but it comes at the cost of creating a table that's going to handle that work for you. But then the nice thing too is that ends up being the record itself ends up being a record of what it did. When I complete that record, rather than just deleting it out, I kept status information about what happened during that processing, and it's proof that things happened. So it can be a good logging mechanism at the same time that it's a processing mechanism.
I am writing a log message now, so I just have to trigger on that. Okay.
And I can confirm that Dale will often look at that and say, hey, Jeff, it happened here, and this is why you're not seeing it, because you're not looking in the right place. So it's a really good structure that we've seen work out really well on our end.
Okay, does that give you enough to go on? Are you looking for other ideas?
Nope, that gives me enough to go on. That I, thought I'd throw it out to the group because there's a lot more experience here and that know the hidden gems inside the tool here.
Another interesting pattern, I don't think is the case here, but I think it's good to have in the tool set, is when you work with API requests, usually what lasts longer is the HTTP request, not the processing of data. That's usually the job that lasts more. So then, for example, let's say if you had to do it, because some APIs will force you to do it in batches, will not let you to get 15,000 entries, they will give you 100 at a time. So then if you need to parse 100,000, that will be forever. You can do parallel actions. So we have an action that allows you to do things asynchronously. So that could be an interesting pattern to do things in parallel. So you don't have to do it sequentially. One API ends, the next call starts. You can do 10 calls at a time.
Okay, I saw the execute async in the workflow, and I just didn't know if that was meant to execute a workflow, or so once you open that up, you can go execute any list of actions like a server request or something.
Exactly. They are executed, but the execution flow doesn't wait for it to finish. So it continues.
That would help with because right now, I'm getting the 15,000 records. It is that situation where they have a throttle and say you can only get 500 at a time. So I'm having to go back and forth.
Good. All right. We have reached the spot where we have an empty slide and we have 4 minutes left. So we're back to last call or anything that we didn't touch that you want to circle back to, or crack open a beer. It's only 11 o'clock here, but I know it's late for some of you guys.
Hey, Bogdan, just a quick question on what you just mentioned. If I've got a table that I'm pinging and I set up asynchronous, how do I avoid getting duplicate information from the two separate API calls?
I suspect that maybe you'll have a counter that you increment. You save the counter somewhere. So let's say the counter, let's say, is the page, and then you say, bring me page 1. And of course, on the next call, you increment it every time, and each of them will start and get page 1, 2, 3, 4. And they will finish. Page 10 could finish before page 1. So you have to be aware that they are asynchronous, and nobody guarantees the order anymore.
Gotcha. So they would all use the same counter and just update that as it goes and then make the call separately. I love it. Thanks.
Welcome.
Bogdan, Dale had a slide in there of Bogdan 1.18. Was there anything else that you wanted to fill us in on?
But the beta is going well. We had 2 sets of regressions that we fixed, but I emailed the beta group as well. And I think the release is going out on Monday. We are on track. We've updated our internal systems. They perform well. Today we upgraded the console and the DNN Sharp website. Those are the big ones that we leave at the end because they have so much logic in them. So we still have the beta open until Sunday. So if you can upgrade some of your clone systems, staging systems, I think those are the setups that will reveal if there are any more problems. Because you saw that in 1.18 we did a lot of work. One was the revamping the admin UI, so there was a few regressions coming from that. But the other piece is also we started refactoring the entire action form, and that is not visible yet, the Bootstrap 5 and the Razor templates. But behind the scene, it's already a lot of changes. So I think the form and the admin screens have caused the regressions, and I think it will be useful to test them in let's say, closer to production setups.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So just a matter of housekeeping, Andrew, you'd asked to be part of the Campfire website. You should have an invitation email from us now to do that. So welcome aboard. Okay. great. We've hit our hour. We're taking 2 weeks off, and then we'll be back again in the the first week of January. So this has been another good session, really good session, I think. Thank you all for participating, and we'll see you in a few weeks. Have a great Christmas.
Sounds good.
Hey, everybody.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. Wait. Don't forget our Christmas special. The campfire, excuse me, the cafe coming up on Wednesday. So we do get one more opportunity. There's going to be this great Hacks and Geeks auction, charity auction. We're going to have a good time and just kind of look back, look forward, and have a little bit of fun. So do come see us on Wednesday as well. But for Campfire, we're signing out. We'll see you guys next year.
Sounds good.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Christmas. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Happy holidays.
Thanks to everyone for their help this year.